Are you looking for some small batch specialty coffee?
Look no further than Cold Blooded Caffeine.
We roast every bag in-house after you order for the freshest coffee experience you can get.
And we don't stop there. Cold Blooded Caffeine was founded with a conservation mindset. In fact, 5% of every bag sold is donated back to wildlife conservation initiatives.
Order yours today at coldbloodedcaffeine.com.
In today's podcast, we're going to talk about the 5 things that you can do immediately to improve your home coffee game. We've had an article posted on our website for a couple of months that listed out these 5 things. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. But we thought that this topic was important enough that we wanted to make a separate podcast on this topic. So we're going to get right in and talk about the 5 things that you can do at home to improve your coffee making experience.
So I'll start with the number one thing, which would be to measure everything. It is important that you have consistency when you are making coffee and to measure your coffee, the amount of grounds that you're using when you're making a cup or a entire air pot, and also measuring the water. You want to have the right ratio of coffee grounds to water to make sure you're consistent with every cup or every batch of coffee that you make. So that is the number one thing that you should definitely do, which is measure everything.
Number 2 is to get fresh coffee. It's really important to get fresh coffee if you're going to want the optimal taste profiles out of your roast. That roaster has dedicated a lot of time and energy to roast that coffee to the best of their abilities and has given you guidelines on the bags as to what that flavor profile will be. To get the most out of that bag of coffee, you need to consume it within a reasonable amount of time. And we recommend between 30 to 45 days post-roast to consume your coffee, assuming that you've stored it properly and that you purchased it whole bean and are grinding it as you use it. If you're purchasing ground coffee or you're storing it in the bag per se, instead of like a dedicated coffee storage container, it will reduce that time significantly depending on the type of roast. But 30 to 45 days. And if you don't know when your coffee was roasted, either you can ask the roaster. Most specialty roasters will either have that information for you or either have it on the bag. And like for us, we don't always put it on the bags that we send out when we ship because we literally roasted it the day before.
Exactly.
So everything that you get from us is no more than 2 days post-roast.
Yeah, which is very important and very unique. I really like that about what we do. Number 3, I would say would be check your water temperature. So the one thing you want to also have consistency with is the temperature of the water that you're using to make your coffee. Ideal temperature is 205 degrees. So oftentimes you may have seen us at the at maybe a reptile show or even within the community. And when we're roasting or actually serving coffee, we're using an electric gooseneck kettle, and it has a very specific setting that allows you to get exactly to 205 degrees and hold it at that temperature while you are brewing your coffee. Again, it's one of those things where you're maximizing the taste of the coffee by having it at the right temperature, not too hot, not too warm, but right at that 205 degree mark is where you're going to get the optimal taste and temperature for the type of coffee that you're drinking, especially with fresh roasted coffee. It's important to have that temperature just right to make sure you're getting the best taste.
And usually you'll see kettles like your normal boiling kettles that will go up to boiling, and there's not a set temperature below that. Right. In many instances. The reason why you don't want to just do straight boiling water is that you can introduce like a burnt or like a scorched taste to the coffee because it's actually heating it a little too fast as it's brewing. And the reason that we want to make sure that the temperature of that boiling water is at 205 degrees and not too cool is that you will get into a point where you're not extracting at an optimal rate and you'll get coffee that's too watery. It's not getting the most out of those grounds as it's going through that bed of coffee.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen before where a kettle either didn't get warm enough and you pour it over the coffee grounds and you don't get the same effect at all. Actually, the blooming process is actually completely negated at that point because you're not able to extract those coffee grounds. So getting to that right temperature is really important.
And this is a common problem that people encounter with residential coffee makers. Some of these coffee makers either are inconsistent in their attaining a good temperature, or they are just not getting there at all. And so one of the things that you can do is to preheat the water as you're putting it into the reservoir to a temperature that is going to assist in that coffee maker getting up to temperature. But do your research as you're looking for your equipment, see what people are saying, because this is a commonly searched for issue. So you should be able to find fairly easily a brewer that can get to and maintain a consistent temperature between, I would say, 200 to 208 degrees is a pretty decent range for a residential coffee maker. If it's hitting those numbers, you're gonna have a good cup of coffee out of it. Number 4 is clean your equipment regularly. This goes for the machine, it goes for the carafe or whatever vessel that the coffee is being brewed into, and it also goes for your serving utensils, cups, mugs, what have you. So you want to make sure that all of that equipment is cleaned regularly. For carafes and for mugs, they need to be cleaned after every use. And for the equipment, go by the manufacturer's specified guidelines. Some equipment does need to be maintained a little bit more frequently than others. For instance, Keurigs, especially some of your higher end Keurigs, actually have to be maintained a little bit more frequently due to the moving parts and due to all the different elements of those machines, as opposed to some of your like commercial drip brewers, which are pretty rock solid, and they just need to be descaled, once every couple of months with no issues. But the main point here is to make sure that you're getting any of the coffee residue or anything that's going to change the taste of that coffee in any way. Because remember, even though I've heard people say that they like a seasoned cup or something like that, it's going to negatively impact the coffee that you're brewing in that moment, right? So you're not going to be getting what you're putting in all this work to get. If you're maximizing your temperature, if you're maximizing your grind size, if you're getting the freshest coffee, you're going to ruin it by imparting sour notes or other coffee flavors into that coffee from stuff that's just been sitting in the cup.
I think that people, and to that point, I think this is where people oftentimes don't realize what fresh coffee tastes like. Like you said earlier, right? People want to use a seasoned cup. Like we've seen coffee cups that are like brown and I don't know, stained to no end, and from people really not cleaning their coffee cups properly. But they say that this is what make my coffee taste the way that it does. But the reality is, as Trey mentioned, you're just not getting what you're putting into a fresh brewed cup of coffee by using, equipment or coffee mugs or carafes that are not cleaned properly. Like it's that seasoned.
I mean, it honestly just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. The seasoned coffee mug thing. Like I get where people are coming up with it. Like you season cast iron pans and but this isn't a porous material. This isn't something that you're going to have to like seal in. This is a coffee mug, it should be clean. To me, it's an excuse to be lazy. To be perfectly honest, I think this is just an excuse to be lazy. And if you're going through all this effort to source the fresh coffee, to, go through all these steps, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a fresh mug or a clean machine. We recommend using commercial cleaners specifically made for coffee makers if you are going to clean your machines. Some of an example of one would be Cafeza is a commercial espresso cleaner that will also clean your home coffee makers. It's just really good at getting off that coffee residue. We also sell a product through the Coffee Run, the delivery service, called Squeaky Clean, which is a glass coffee pot cleaner that we sell that works really well as well. So use a commercially available, or just use some Dawn dish soap and clean out your mugs. It'll do the job.
Number 5 would be water, filtered water. Guy asked me once before, does water or coffee taste different depending on the type of water you use?
Yeah,
absolutely. You can't just use tap water or any water from any source and expect to have a great tasting cup of coffee every time. So we would suggest using filtered water in order to brew your coffee. It makes a very big difference in the taste overall. Even there's certain minerals that are in water itself that actually there's been some research out there that says you can add minerals to water to make it a certain pH level that will improve the taste of water. But definitely using some type of filtered water is the best approach.
Yeah, so we recommend, if you can, to use spring water because that's going to have all of the natural elements. The reason why you don't want to use tap water is the chlorine, really.
Correct.
It's going to, if you've ever drank water and you taste that chemical taste.
Or you see the stain that it leaves if you leave it sitting too long, right? That's the chemicals.
You're gonna change the flavor of that coffee. Spring water doesn't have that. It's got all the good minerals without the negative ones. If you don't have spring water, or if you drink enough coffee where it becomes a little bit cost ineffective to use spring water, you can use a Brita filter or any of the other commercially available water filters. There's tons of them out there that you can filter the water through before you put it into the machine, so that way all of the negative chemicals that are in your tap water are removed. The one caveat here is that you should not be using RODI water or reverse osmosis deionized water because that strips all of the chemicals and minerals,
out.
And it's pure water, which is great for a lot of uses that we have within like the wildlife animal industry, fish tanks and all that stuff. But it is not good for making coffee because it doesn't have any of the good flavors, any of the good minerals that are needed to make a good cup of coffee. Water is very, very important. There's only 2 ingredients in coffee.
Let me think.
What are they?
Water and coffee
right?
grounds. Oh, coffee, yes.
Yeah. So you got 2 ingredients to make a cup of coffee, and assuming you're not adding anything to it, right?
Right.
But 2 ingredients to make a good cup of coffee. One of them is water. That means it's very important and can have a big impact on your overall taste.
Yep, for sure.
And the last one, we're going to give you a bonus one. I said 5, but we actually have 6. Store your coffee properly.
Absolutely.
So it's super important. I know that especially specialty coffee is not cheap. And so we want to make sure that you're getting the most for your money when you're buying coffee. The bags that we use in the most specialty coffee roasters put their coffee in are really, really nice quality bags. But once they're open and you've introduced that oxygen into that coffee, the staling process has already begun. So our bags actually have a zipper on them, which is great. Again, that's great. But that is not the end all be all solution when you're talking about storing coffee. What we recommend is to have an airtight storage canister made specifically for coffee that allows that oxygen to escape without allowing oxygen into it. And these are available from many online retailers. I mean, you can go to Amazon. That's where we got a lot of ours.
Yeah.
You can get them from a coffee retailer as well. But they will definitely help in making that coffee last as long as possible once you've popped open that bag.
But even with the bags that we buy, they also have the degassing valve on the
back.
They do
have the degassing valve, yes.
Which helps.
It does help. But as many times as you open that bag, you're not purging that air out. So every time that air goes in, or every time you open that bag and oxygen goes in, it does take some amount of time because that's a passive air system. With those airtight canisters, when you push down, it actually forces the air out.
Right.
And so it's not sitting in that oxygen-rich environment.
Right.
For an extended period of time.
You have to be more intentional when you're using a bag with the degassing valve to try to get the oxygen out versus something like the airscape canisters.
The degassing valve is important for carbon dioxide to escape, because if you don't have those degassing valves, after you roast the coffee, that carbon dioxide is going to escape from the beans as part of the roasting process.
Right.
And it's going to cause a buildup of air within that bag. And if it doesn't have that degassing valve, then it will have the potential to rupture. Right. And we've experienced that with some experimentation that we've done. So that degassing valve is very important for the post-roast up to first consumption. But then once you open that bag, even though it's got that zipper on it, and that zipper's better than not having it at all, just to be clear. But we definitely recommend, if you're being serious about it, if you're if you're doing all these steps to make sure that you're getting the most out of your coffee, get you a nice airtight coffee canister that you can dump that bag into once you have open that bag for the first time, and you're gonna be able to taste a noticeable difference over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully you enjoy this episode. Again, we wanted to make sure we kind of brought this to life. We did get a good bit of downloads on the website for this document, but it was definitely worth the time to discuss it again on this podcast to make sure you are well aware of these things and hopefully can quickly improve your overall coffee experience.
And we're not taking it off the website. So if you would like to see the document itself, it's a very nice put together document, if I do say so myself. That
sounds like someone's bragging.
That's available for download on our website, www.coldbloodedcaffeine.com. Again, if you are interested in some specialty coffee, small batch specialty roasted coffee, check us out on the website. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We're trying to post some good content, so check us out there, give us a follow and a like, and we greatly appreciate it.